If you're looking for the most expert advice on Amazon interviewing on YouTube, then you found the right channel. Stick around. So, let me introduce myself. I am Gigi. I am the Amazon interview whiz. I was a business leader and interview bar raiser at Amazon for years. I hired hundreds of Amazonians and I know exactly what it takes to hire, to get a job at Amazon. I now run my own Amazon Interview Whiz Academy to make Amazon interview coaching accessible to everybody. What I discovered when I was a bar raiser was that those people who had coaching or done lots of prep tended to do better than those that didn't. And then I discovered how expensive one-to-one interview preparation coaching was. I wanted to make it affordable, and I have therefore built a whole suite of digital courses to make that possible. And of course, I have my YouTube channel and these free sessions for you guys. What else can I tell you? If you hang around until the end, I have an awesome freebie to give to you that I promise you every single Amazon candidate needs. So please hang around until the end. Today's session is going to be a little bit different because I have a guest that I have invited onto our session this morning or this afternoon, whatever time it is in your time zone. I'm gonna introduce Jeanie, who has been an attendee of these lives for the past month or so. You may remember she's been a regular attendee if you've been here before. Jeanie's also taken part in my masterclass courses, and she let me know last night that she had managed to secure herself a job in Amazon. Jeanie was a temporary Amazonian, joined on a temp basis, and working with my program and coming to these lives and doing tons of prep, she's managed to land herself a permanent role. So I asked her to join us today just to chat maybe for 5 minutes to give you guys some insights on her preparation process and maybe give you her top tip. And we'll have a chat with Jeanie and then we'll move back to the normal Q&A process. So with my new kind of starship console here, I'm going to try and bring Jeanie in. So do forgive me if this all goes horribly wrong, but let's see if we can add Jeanie now. So bring you in, Jeanie. I think
I'm here. Good morning.
How are you, Jeanie? Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really, really excited to be here. I can't tell you how excited I was on Friday when the recruiter called and offered me the position. It's an L5 position in disability leave services, escalation investigator, which means I'll be supporting the internal customers. So everything that you said in your content was spot on. Everything was correct. The importance to the details when writing out the examples of the leadership principles could not have been more correct. And the depth that we encourage everyone to go into in those examples probably saved me a couple of times during the loop. My loop was last Monday.
Right.
And there were 5 interviewers.
Okay.
All spectrums of the team, and then obviously the bar raiser. But I went in fully prepared thanks to you and your masterclass and all of these sessions with all these awesome people from around the world that join us.
It's amazing, isn't it, how many people come from all around the world. So, Jeanie, you were talking about your prep. Can you maybe give us just a sense of how did you go about preparing? Because obviously there's so much material. You've seen my stuff, but there are billions of other people online who are offering prep information. So what was your process?
My process was, the first thing that I did is I went back and I remembered all of the things in my career that I had done to make a difference, or, something that really stuck out. And I drafted all of them on a sheet. And then I went back and I added all the details of those experiences throughout my career. And then I took all 14 leadership principles, and I was able to draft an example for all 14 leadership principles based on my past experiences. So once I got them all drafted, knowing that Amazon is very committed to customer obsession, I wanted to do 2 or 3 extra in customer obsession to make sure that I had those covered.
Okay.
So after I got them all detailed and drafted, and I had one example for all leadership principles, then I went and I videotaped myself on my laptop.
That's interesting.
Yes, but what it did was it boosted my confidence in explaining those examples. And on the camera of the laptop, there's a timer. And you recommended that each of the examples be 6 to 8 minutes, because you need to make sure you have those details. So I would watch the timer, and if it were too short, then I would revise that and I would add more detail. I would add more depth. So I stretched each one out to 7 to 8 minutes. That was probably the biggest tip I have for your viewers.
Right.
Because being able to speak and present your examples with confidence is just as important as the depth and the details and matching to the leadership principles.
Awesome.
And the other bonus that you get from that confidence in presenting that is when they throw a question at you that you're not really sure, you still have the confidence in knowing that you can present this example that matches the principle. They give you time to make your notes, and you had recommended make the notes, but methodically be thinking through which principle is this, because sometimes it's a little tough to tell.
It is sometimes tricky. Yeah, that's right. Cool.
Absolutely. It was amazing. And again, that was probably my biggest tip. The detail is so important, because even though I added the improve at the end that you suggested, I went through the star. The star is mandatory. You have to stay in the star form.
Yeah, for sure.
There's no way around that. And once you get through that example and you add the improve, each one of my interviewers came back with questions. And it wasn't to throw me off, it was to dig deeper into the details that I had not thought to add myself. But it was a great experience, and I don't want anyone to think that Amazon is not there to fail you. If you get to the loop, they have invested as much of their time as you have into this process, and it's very important to both.
Yeah.
So it's like a partnership. And if your viewers keep that in mind, it reduces some of that anxiety.
Fantastic, Jeanie. Thank you so much. So just to summarize up, right? Jeanie's biggest tip, record yourself. And actually, that's not something that I've particularly mentioned in my YouTube channel, but I'm hearing more and more from candidates that recording themselves has been one of their biggest kind of success tricks. So I'm going to make a video on that. I'm going to steal it from you, but I'll name check you in it, make sure everyone knows it was you that suggested it. So record yourself.
Someone wonderful.
And then the second one is that your interviewers are your friends. Don't go into it with a combatant mentality. If they've got that far, everybody in that room really wants you to succeed, because that means their time has been well spent. So those are 2 brilliant, brilliant tips, Jeanie. Thank you so much. Congratulations. I'm so thrilled for you. I know you're going to have a fantastic Amazon career. There is no place that you can learn as much, as fast as you can in Amazon. Thank you so much for being such a great contributor to the community. It's been a dream.
Thank you so much, and good luck to everyone.
Thank you for your time, Jeanie. I'm gonna say goodbye to you now, and we're gonna get on with the Q&A. Obviously, you don't need it anymore because you've got your job, but hopefully we can answer some questions for everybody else. So be safe, Jeanie. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Oh, that's the wrong solo. There we go. Okay. So everybody, I hope you found that helpful with our 2 top tips from Jeanie there. Such a lovely lady, so delighted for her. Okay, let us get on with the session as we usually would. I hope that was kind of good to hear, guys, that there are people who are getting the roles. I know it's a challenging process, but people get jobs in Amazon. So hopefully together we can get you there. So let's start on the questions. I'm so excited. Okay, scrolling. In case you didn't know, type your questions here and I will scroll through and try and find ones that are useful for everybody. I can take my headphones off now as well. Okay. Okay, so Asal, I'm just going to post this because I get this question from people. Oh, sorry, I'm having screen issues here. Okay, so yes, in one of my interviews, I did suggest that you ask your recruiter for what the leadership principles were, and your leadership principles, your recruiter said it depends on the team and can't help. It's true, right? In some cases, the recruiter is willing to share the leadership principles. I've had so many people, and there's been people even on these lives that have said that their recruiter has told them the leadership principles to focus on. And other people, the recruiter says no. And I have absolutely no idea why some say yes and some say no. There's no policy around it. So I suggest everybody tries because, hey, you may as well try. But if the answer is no, then you're going to have to actually read the job description that you're given and literally go through it line by line by line and try and identify the language and what leadership principle that refers to. If you really, really understand the leadership principles and, you know, on top of what Jeanie said earlier on, that for me is just the most important thing when it comes to success at an Amazon interview. You have to understand the leadership principles. So if you've done your homework and you understand the leadership principles, then you need to then go through that job description and line by line and connect up the language in the job description with the leadership principles. What I do is I go through them line by line by line, and I literally tick off every time I think a particular leadership principle has been mentioned. You know, like 1, 2, 3 mentions of earns trust, 1, 2, 3, 4 mentions of dive deep, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mentions of deliver results. And I simply stack rank them. And the more times that I think a leadership principle has been mentioned in a job description, the more important I assume it to be as a priority in the role. And that's how I go about diagnosing what the key leadership principles are for a particular role. So Asal, I'm really sorry that your recruiter wouldn't do it for you this time. I still suggest everybody asks because some do, but in that you didn't get them, Asal, just go through that job description and pick out the key language for the leadership principles, and that will get you as close as you can. Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to move on to another one. Any more thumbs up would be awesome, please, guys. Get that algorithm going and let everybody know that we're here. Let's see what else we've got. Ah, Yellow Lab. Yellow Lab, so we've got another successful candidate, and you've got a start date of the 1st of June. Oh, congratulations, Yellow Lab. I'm so pleased for you. That's amazing. Thank you. Yes, I would very much appreciate a review on my website. You can actually find that on Google Maps and do a review there. If you want to get the details, get in touch. But congratulations, amazing job. Oh, I'm so excited. 2 people today. It's amazing. Okay, let's move on then to see if we can get to some questions. Okay, it looks like Harris has got some questions. Okay, let's just pop that one up here. I'm actually going to put my glasses on. I'm struggling a bit to see. I think I'm going to have to do something about this. There we go. Sorry guys, you see me with my specs on. Question 1. If you explain a mistake you made and later correct it during a project, is it considered a failure story? Is it considered a failure story? Well, I mean, Harris, it all kind of depends on how the question is phrased. If you're being asked to tell me about a time where you had a significant career failure, you're going to have to make a judgment as to whether the mistake that you made in your project that you went on and corrected later qualifies as something that is a significant failure. Now, usually I would say if you've managed to fix it before the project finishes, it's probably not a significant failure. But you really have to be paying attention to the nature of the question. There's nuances in how the questions are asked that you need to be listening to so that you can really match it to the right example that you've got prepared. So the next question then. Okay, for a non-tech PM interview, what else is included other than behavioural? So I did say I wasn't going to go through specific questions for specific roles, but broadly speaking, everybody, if you're going for a non-technical role, in most cases, you won't be asked to do anything in addition to the leadership principles. If you're at panel, for example, in the early rounds, someone's going to want to be making sure that you have the skills that you need. So if you're going for a finance role, chances are, even though it's not a technical role, someone's going to ask you to do an Excel test, because pretty much everyone in finance has to be extremely competent using Excel in order to be a good finance manager. Broadly speaking, however, the main focus on non-technical recruitment is going to be around the leadership principles. There may be some tests as far as your mathematical capabilities are concerned. And if you're an L6 or above, you're going to have the writing sample. If there's particular skills required for your non-technical area, for example, let's imagine that you are a designer. You're going to have to present your portfolio. So there will be some elements of technical assessment, even if you're not tech. But primarily, and this is even true of technical roles, the reasons that you will or will not get hired at Amazon are going to be focused on the leadership principles, and they will discover the leadership principle strength you have through those behavioral questions. Okay, Harris, so I hope that was helpful. Biggest tip, really listen into the question, because you don't want to misconstrue a failure question for a mistake question. Okay, moving on then. What Christina, this is a really good question, because as you all know, the bar, what you're being hired against is whether you are better than 50% of the current population operating at that level. Christina's question is, well, how are the hiring team actually measuring? It's not about your experience necessarily, it's about how you demonstrate the leadership principles against the Amazonians working at the same level. It's not a mathematical piece of analysis, Christina. There are a large number of people on the panel to ensure that as many people, a large number of people can bring their perspective. The way they know whether you are operating at a higher level than 50% of the current population is they will all have people that they work with at that level. They'll be working with 40, 50 individuals in the business every single day who are potentially at that level. And based on the innate, I'll write a lot, I guess, judgment of the people on your panel, they will take a view as to, if they think about the example that you've given, and you're an L5, they're going to think about the very, very best L5s in their team and ask themselves, would that L5 do that type of thing? And then they're going to think about the people who are in the middle, and they're going to ask themselves, is my average L5 going to do that thing? And then they're going to think about the people who are their least strong performers, or least strong performers that they work with, and they're going to ask themselves, would that type of person do this thing? And based on that kind of self-reference for the people that they work with every day, they will take a personal judgment on whether they believe that your example is bar raising or not against the population that they're used to. And when you have multiple different people in the conversation who are all doing that same thing, part of the conversation does often revolve around, I think this is bar raising. I definitely think this is something that I wouldn't see from my bottom 50%. someone else might challenge that and say, actually, I think it is something that I would see from my bottom 50%. And it's through that process of dialogue and pulling out examples that they can articulate about other people in the business at the moment that they get to whether they believe that you're bar raising or not. It's not mathematical in any way. It's about the fact that these Amazonians are operating every single day inside the organization with people at that level. And anybody who is not operating inside the organization at a given time cannot tell you what is and isn't bar raising. I want to be really clear about that. There is no one, if they are not operating inside the business, who can tell you, if you told them your example, it was bar raising or not. You have to be inside the business every single day, working with the people to know what the standard is, because the standard is always changing in Amazon. Okay, so I hope that answered your question, Christina. I'm going to move on. Okay, what else do we have here? Oops, still looking. Okay, Neha, there we go. So you didn't make it past an interview recently after the hiring manager, okay. Okay, you think you know what went wrong. Do I recommend you apply for similar roles? Yeah, I do actually. So my big tip in terms of applying again for Amazon is that lots of people do it, right? And Amazon absolutely expects that people will want to keep applying because you want to work at Amazon. If you are going to reapply, then definitely you should be focused on the same type of role that you've applied for before. So you're a program manager, Neha, that's fantastic because there are program management roles pretty much everywhere in Amazon. And because program management is the skill rather than the particular business unit being the skill, you could happily apply for a program manager role in pretty much any part of Amazon, and a recruiter would look at your application and go, Neha applied for a program manager role in, I'm making up now, Audible. That didn't work out for her. Now she's applying for Amazon Air. Sure, why not? She's a program manager and she wants to be a program manager. I'll happily consider her application. What you shouldn't do is start applying for roles that don't actually have any connection to each other. So if the recruiter was to see an application from Neha to be a vendor manager, and then maybe another application to be a, I don't know, excuse me. That's embarrassing. That's never happened to me before. No one ever phones me, so that's embarrassing. If Neha was to be applying also for a loss prevention manager, the recruiter is going to look at an application for a program manager, an application for a vendor manager, and an application for a loss prevention program manager, and going to be very confused as to what Neha is up to. They're going to assume that all Neha wants to do is work for Amazon, and she's simply throwing as much mud at the wall as she possibly can and hopes something that will stick. And it will not make them feel good about Neha's commitment to their particular role type. So absolutely, Neha, yes, if you wish to reapply, go ahead and reapply for program manager roles. Just make sure you stick with that skill set of program management, and it will make sense to any recruiter who picks up your application. I hope that was helpful. Good luck. I hope it works out for you the next time. Okay. Just scrolling through, looking for questions. Okay. Yeah, Jonathan, hello. So welcome. I don't think I recognize your name, so welcome. And if you've been here before, I'm sorry that I haven't recognized your name. So you got a final loop for a senior manager finance. Very good. I've done lots of loops for L7 finance roles. You've got 4 people, the director of finance and 3 senior managers of finance. You don't see anyone who fits the bar raiser role. Is that surprising? Well, it's not surprising that you can't see anybody that fits the bar raiser role. You will definitely have a bar raiser on your loop. So I think I have a YouTube video that talks about this, but in the main, your bar raiser will come from outside the organization. So they will be a third-party independent person who isn't working in that team, and their skill is a bar raiser, and that's what they're there to do, to be kind of independent, non-biased. Now, quite often that means that the person has a completely random job title that makes no sense whatsoever with the rest of the people in the organization. But sometimes you're going into an organization that is so big that even though a person's role is a number of times removed from the exact team that's hiring, they still look like they have a similar role or a similar job function. So it's definitely going to be one of those people on your loop that is the bar raiser, but it might be that they are a senior manager of finance in a different finance team than the finance team that you are directly applying for. So they will be in there, but it makes total sense that from a job title point of view, you might not be able to spot them, which is why I do urge caution to people about trying to even bother working out who the bar raiser is. It doesn't make any difference to you guys who that bar raiser is. Your actual interview with that bar raiser will be exactly the same interview and same structure, same questions, same approach, same everything as it would be with anybody else on that panel. So you just need to, Jonathan, go into your interview, assume everybody is the bar raiser, and that way you're not going to get it wrong because you're going to bring your A game to every single one of your interviews. And I say that to everybody, even if you think you know who the bar raiser is, you should still treat every interviewer as if they were the bar raiser. Thank you for the question, Jonathan. Good luck. Okay, Ashley. So, how does it look if you give an example of decreasing something, say an error rate, however you're not directly responsible for keeping track of the numbers, so you can't give specifics? So, Amazon really, really wants to see the results of your work, of your deliverables. So it's really, really important, if you at all can, to pick an example where you can actually talk about the metric improvements. So I would say to you, Ashley, you've got to do whatever you can to try and come up with some kind of a metric associated with your impact. If it's a fantastic example and you really, really don't have a metric, then if it's really complex, if it's got lots of behavioral information in it and it's really, really engaging, you might get away without actually being able to tell them the impact of it. But if you possibly can, you should always try and bring numbers and metrics, even if you haven't got the exact number, to be able to talk about lifts, percentage changes, etc., is really important. So it sounds like you're in a little bit of a tricky situation, that you were trying to improve a metric, but you can't tell them how that metric moved from one place to another. Got to be honest with you, Ashley, it's not ideal. If you can produce a number, that will be very useful for your cause. Okay, so thank you for that one, Ashley. I'm going to move on. Thank you, Harris, for the thumbs up. I appreciate that, Harris. Everybody else, can you follow Harris's example, please, and give me some thumbs up? Got to tell that algorithm that this is worth doing. I promise you it's worth doing. Okay. Yes, okay. Yeah, okay, Petya, let me put this question up. Now, salary and compensation is not my area of expertise, but everybody always asks it. So I'm going to talk about this here now. So Petya, at your first phone screen with the recruiter, you were asked about salary expectations. This was unexpected and you weren't prepared. Is it normal practice as a project management role? So it should be normal practice in my point of view. It isn't always, and recruiters don't always do this, but without question, I believe that the recruiter should, at the very, very first instance possible, talk about salary expectations. And I also say to candidates, you should bring up salary expectations in the very, very early stages, because there is 0 point, absolutely 0 point of you going through the entire interview process and getting to the other end and then discovering that Amazon can't offer you what you need to earn to maintain the lifestyle that you want to maintain. I have had this happen to someone that I was helping through the Amazon process. She made it all the way through the entire process, got to the end, only to discover that the offer that Amazon were giving her was well below what she needed to live her life. And it was a complete waste of her time. It was a complete waste of Amazon's time, which is why I really don't get it, why recruiters don't bring that subject up at the beginning. So you should definitely go in the early stages, talking to your recruiter, and ask about salary ranges. They may well ask you. If they ask you, then have a range of salary in mind. Do your research. There are a number of different websites you can use. I think salary.com is one that my Amazon recruiter friends tell me about. Look at your location, look at your type of job, and it will give you a salary range. Don't use Glassdoor. That's really compromised as a data set. It's self-reported. People throw in their bonuses. People throw in their RSUs. It's a mess. Don't use it. Use something like salary.com and have your range, or ask the recruiter for their range. And then you know at the very beginning whether this is going to be a viable proposition for you or not. And if it's not, then you may as well not waste your time, nor waste Amazon's time. Equally, if your recruiter can't meet your expectations, they should be very upfront and tell you about it. But if it isn't normal for people to talk about comp with their recruiter upfront, I think it should be. So Pecha, hopefully that didn't throw you off too much. If it does throw you off, by the way, guys, and you're not expecting it, don't be forced into a corner. You should absolutely feel free to say to your recruiter, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't expecting to have this conversation now. Actually, I don't want to talk about it now because I haven't done my research. Let me go away and do my research and I will get back to you. So don't just answer it immediately if you weren't expecting to. I'm sure they will not mind if you say that you need to come back to them. They know that you need to present the best opportunity for yourself as possible. Okay, Petra, good luck with your process. I hope it goes well for you. Thank you for asking that question. Okay, Wandering Monk. That's a fabulous picture, Wandering Monk. Can I talk about the job portal and whether the statuses have any relevance? So the reason why I've put this up is I get this question all the time about the different statuses of the job portal, and I actually cannot answer it. But I am working very, very hard to get somebody onto one of these lives who can answer it. So I cannot tell you the answer now, but I have my fingers tightly crossed that on Wednesday, we might have a guest star coming into the live who will be answering it. So if you can, head back on Wednesday and hopefully somebody else will be able to answer that question for you. Okay, who else have we got here? Yeah. Yes. Okay. Hey James, how are you doing? Thank you for joining. So, is it common practice to not receive any feedback on why we didn't progress to the next round of interviews? Yes, it is Amazon policy not to provide feedback on outcomes for candidates. Two reasons for this. One is a little bit kind of mythological, but I believe in it. And the other is absolutely true. That first reason is hearsay and mythology has it that Amazon used to give feedback to candidates, and then a couple of candidates got a little bit litigious when they didn't like what they heard. The second reason is, as an interviewer, which I was many times, you want to feel confident and comfortable to be able to tell the absolute truth about your experience of a candidate. And if you felt that what you said would then be transferred over to a candidate, if you were the only person doing that interview, then clearly it was you that said it. But even in a loop where there's 4 or 5 people, odds are you might have said it. We all live our lives very openly on social media, and I as an interviewer would be very uncomfortable if I felt that something that I said would be relayed to a candidate and risk some kind of retribution from that candidate on social media platforms, etc. And I have to tell you, it isn't an outside chance. There are lots of candidates who are disgruntled and disappointed by the outcome of their experience. They email me and tell me about it regularly. So as an interviewer, you want the protection to feel comfortable that you can say what you need to say, which is the truth. So for those two reasons, to protect their shareholders and protect their employees, Amazon doesn't give feedback to anybody. Now, I do have a video on my website, not my website, on my YouTube channel, that talks about that and gives you advice on how to collect your own feedback. To summarize it up rather than replay the whole video, what you should do is, as soon as you come out of an interview, write down everything you can remember. Everything you can remember that was said or that you said as soon as you come out of the interview. Over the next 24 hours, new things will come into your head. Write them down as well. You'll then have a very, very comprehensive kind of transcript of what went on at the interview. And at that point, you can look at that transcript and challenge yourself in terms of, what do I like? What do I not like? What do I think I could have done better? Why did they ask me that follow-up question? Was there something that I didn't tell them about, per what Jeanie was saying at the beginning? Is there something I missed and that they felt they needed to get detail on? Is that a repeated pattern throughout my interviews? And if so, what can I teach myself in terms of fixing that pattern of behavior so that my next interview goes better? Then if you make it through to the next round, awesome, you've got all those learnings that you can then apply in your preparation for the next round. If you don't make it through to the next round, then at least you will have some record of what you did and some personally gathered feedback so that you can then adapt and utilize that for the next interview that you do, either at Amazon or somewhere else. So James, I know it's difficult. It's very frustrating for candidates. I hear it all the time, but I do believe that it's the right policy done for the right reasons. Okay, thank you for the question though, James. Right, let's have a look. Oh, I've got a huge swathe of thumbs up. Thank you guys, appreciate the thumbs up. I'm very grateful. Okay. Okay. Sedant, hello, welcome. So you repeated a story in your loop, 2 different stories with 2 different people. One in your phone screen and then recycled in loop. The other story you used in loop, but notified of reuse. Thoughts? I think that's okay. It's going to depend, Sedan, actually on what level role you're applying for. My advice is always to try and avoid repeating examples if you possibly can, but I know possibly can is kind of the key variable in that sentence. In many cases, it's not possible to avoid. If you are in a more junior role, something, you know, an L4 and L5, then you haven't got as much experience, and therefore your interviewer is going to expect you to repeat more than, for example, an L6 or an L7, where they've got many, many more years of career history behind them and therefore should have more experience to be able to pull from. So you've done 2 repeats. I think that's fine. That wouldn't even overly concern me anyway for an L6. 2 repeats at an L6, I'd be thinking, yeah, that's fine. I wouldn't worry too much. At an L5, I would actually expect that. So I think you're fine, Sedan. Don't worry about it. Okay, thank you for the question. I'm gonna move on. Oh, okay. Neha, yeah, okay, got that one. Yes, I remember passing that one by. Okay, so does the initial CV shortlisting happen at hiring manager level or just at recruiter level? So it actually happens in both. So your recruiter will have a very detailed spec from the hiring manager in terms of what they are looking for. You'll submit your CV or resume, depending on where you're from, and the first person to pick it up will be the recruiter. They will then do a filter based on what they know the hiring manager is looking for and decide which CVs, resumes they're going to move forward and which they aren't. The next stage actually differs quite a lot for different roles at the moment. A lot of teams are now starting to use the Amazon online assessment as a stage between the recruiter and the hiring manager. I am actually about to do a video, which I recorded earlier on today, about the Amazon online assessment. It's called ACE Basic, and more people are being asked to do that. So let's assume that that's the process that's going on. What will happen is once the recruiter has decided whether they want to move a CV/resume on, what they'll then do is do some kind of a pre-screen call with the candidate just to make sure that everything is as they would expect. And then they'll get offered the opportunity to do the online assessment. Depending on how the candidate then does in the online assessment, they may or may not then move on to be potentially interviewed by the hiring manager. Other teams aren't using that yet, and the process would be that the recruiter looks at your resume, they like it, they pass it to the hiring manager likes it, they invite you for interview. Or if they don't, they'll tell the recruiter that no thank you, that's not something they're looking for. So at every single stage, before you get to actually have a one-to-one with somebody, there is some kind of a filter going on. The other thing to talk about, Neha, is there is no such thing actually as shortlisting. I think that's quite an important point to your question. What other companies do is they have a closing date for a role. They take in all of the CVs/resumes before that closing date. They then close the door and they accept no more resumes. And then they do, as you say, look at everything that they've got and compare them and decide which ones are better and which ones are not so good. They'll park the ones that are not so good and they'll shortlist the ones they think are better. Amazon doesn't work like that. It's a conveyor belt. So as soon, Neha, as you submit your resume, if the recruiter picks it up, they will look at it immediately and they will assess your CV against the requirements and the standards set by the hiring manager. They won't be comparing you to anybody else's CV. There's no shortlisting. There will simply be the standard that the hiring manager has set for the role, and there will be your resume/CV. And if that and that match very nicely, you'll get to the next stage, whichever stage that is. There's a big difference between how Amazon hires and how other companies tend to hire. There's no shortlisting. You literally are only ever competing with a standard. You are not competing with everybody else who applies. Okay, thank you for that question. Niall, okay. Do you know the names of the people that you're going to have on your loop in advance? Yeah, you should. You should receive an email from the recruitment team that tells you who you're going to be meeting, what their job title is, and obviously the time and the chime details for meeting with them. So once you've got that, you can do a little bit of research, obviously, on LinkedIn just to see who they are and maybe who their connections are and anything that they're particularly kind of focused on as a leader. Generally, you're not going to find a lot of content on LinkedIn from most people. Only 1% of people actually post content in LinkedIn. Fun fact, but certainly worth just checking them out. And just even if it's just to look at the picture, I often find that being able to just recognize the face once it appears on the screen in front of you is just quite a nice thing that helps you kind of feel a bit more comfortable moving into an interview. So even if just to look at LinkedIn so that you recognize their face when it appears on your screen is probably a good thing to do. But yes, you should know in advance who that person is going to be and when you're going to see them and what their job title is. Okay. What else have we got? Okay, Jonathan. So what are some of the best questions I've heard interviewers asking people who work at Amazon? So I assume you mean interviewees, the people who are being interviewed. So this is an interesting space, Jonathan, because I don't believe there's no such concept to me as best questions. I know there's a ton of advice on the web about how important it is to come to your interview with really smart, intelligent questions and wow the interviewer with your questions. Quite frankly, I think that's nonsense. And I personally have an ethical issue with interviewers who expect candidates to use their interview question time to impress them. At Amazon, the evidence that is used to make an assessment as to whether you raise the bar or not is your answers to the behavioural questions associated with the leadership principles. That is the only evidence that is supposed to be used to assess you. Your interviewers are not supposed to use the questions that you ask as evidence to hire you or not. Now, if you don't ask any questions, however, someone is going to raise that, because if you aren't gathering data about one of the biggest decisions in your life, then as a bar raiser in Amazon, I'm going to be very suspicious that when you're making decisions in my business, that I can't rely on you to actually go away and rigorously gather data. Because if you're not going to rigorously gather data before decision making in your own life, why would you be rigorously gathering data for decision making in your business life? So you must ask questions. But in my point of view, your question time should be used so that you can gather the information that you need to know to determine if this is the job that you want. Are you gonna like this work? Are you going to like the team? Are you going to like the manager? Are you going to like the company? I can't see how anyone can make such an important decision in their life without spending time gathering that data. So I've never ever spent any time thinking about whether a candidate asked me a good question or not. I spent my time answering the question in the hope that that was an important thing for the candidate to actually know when it comes to being able to make the decision. So I'm sorry, I know I didn't answer your question at all. I used it as an opportunity to tell people that philosophically, I think you should be spending your time asking questions that will help you make a decision, and you shouldn't waste your time worrying about how you come up with the world's smartest, most intelligent question to wow your interviewer. That's just not something I believe in, and it's not something actually that should be used in evidence for you in an Amazon interview. Anyway, despite what other interview coaches say on LinkedIn or anywhere else. So thanks for the question, Jonathan. You allowed me to get on my soapbox. That's actually something I feel quite passionately about. So I do appreciate you letting me get on my soapbox. Any more thumbs up would be very much appreciated. Okay, let's see what else we've got. What else? Yes, okay. Ayatha, hello, welcome back. Welcome back. How are you doing? Nice to see you again. So, do interviewers have defined facets for leadership principles while judging? Okay, so Ayatha, I assume this is some kind of a reference to my content in the Amazon InterviewWees Academy. So, let me talk you through that. So the facets of the leadership principles that I have articulated for everybody who joins my academy is my way of simplifying up what is hugely complex in terms of the leadership principles. The leadership principles are complicated concepts. They've got lots of different things going on in them. And what I learned from candidates in my time interviewing and bar raising was that sometimes it was just hard to wrap your head around that complexity. So in my masterclasses, I've simplified that down, dissected the leadership principles into different facets based on my expertise. So all leadership principles have a minimum of 2 facets. Some, like customer obsession, have up to 4 based on my experience and my knowledge of how the leadership principles work. And that's how I built my academy, to make it easier for candidates to consume rather than be on their own and try and sift their way through 8 or 9 different lines of description as the leadership principles work. Now, when it comes to the interviewers, they know what I know. You know, in their minds, the facets exist. They may not call them facets, they may not have synthesized them up to facets, but that is definitely what they're thinking about. They will be assigned a leadership principle, and that leadership principle will be what they're focused on in terms of gathering evidence on the behaviors. Now, let's use customer obsession as the example. Customer obsession has 4 facets in it that I have simplified up based on my experience: coaching, challenging, anticipating, and championing. Now, that's my simplification. Anybody who is interviewing someone using the customer obsession leadership principle will have all of that in their head. They won't call it that, but they will have all of that in their head, and they will be looking for those different behaviors associated with all of those facets. So will they have defined facets? No, because that is a GG creation to help my students understand and become experts in the leadership principles. But even though they don't think of them as facets, what has come to construct the facets is absolutely going around in their heads. each interviewer should be assigned 2 leadership principles to ask you questions on. No one will have the same leadership principle. So if you are going through a panel and you have 5 people, you should be asked 10 different leadership principles, each person having 2 each to go through. So I hope that makes sense. We have 3 minutes left. So let me see if I can find one more question, and then I will tell you guys all about that awesome freebie that I promised to tell you about at the very beginning. Oh, going from hardly having any questions, now there's millions of them, guys. Gah. And loads of thumbs ups, which is awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, let's see if we can pick one more. Okay. Let's see what we have. Deepak, this is a brilliant question. This is a brilliant question. What time and day schedule has the maximum conversion rate? I don't think anyone in Amazon could tell you that. I have to be honest. There's some data that they will analyze, and that's definitely not a data point that I have ever seen. And yeah, not a data point I've ever seen. And I don't think anyone in Amazon would ever bother actually doing that analysis. I'm not sure how useful it would be, because effectively they have to schedule interviews, and they haven't got enough resource to be fussy about what time of day they schedule them. So I'm sorry, Deepak, that's a level of data that I don't have, and I don't think anybody has. I suspect there isn't really a true causality associated with day and time. I'd be amazed if there was. Like, the Amazon interview process is so comprehensive, it's so driven by data, it's so rigorous and thorough, it is so built to remove unconscious bias. I just can't imagine, having gone through all of that structure and rigor, that there would be any causality associated with a particular day and a particular time. I really believe in this process. I wouldn't do this if I didn't. The thing that sold me to Amazon was the interview process and the rigor of it. That's why I decided to join Amazon. So I don't think that data point would even exist, to be honest with you, Deepak. Okay, so guys, we are at time. So let me talk to you about my amazing freebie that I have to offer you. So I've talked a couple of times about the Amazon Interviewees Academy. Obviously, we had Jeanie here. We've had a few other people who are part of my academy. I'm offering you guys my Customer Obsession Masterclass completely free. I talked about customer obsession and the 4 different facets about it. The masterclass will take you through those different facets in deep detail. I offer it because obviously I want you guys to know how amazing my content is, and hopefully if you enjoy that masterclass, you will buy some of my other products. But equally, customer obsession is the most important leadership principle. If you guys nail one leadership principle, and only one leadership principle, in your interview, it should be customer obsession. I guarantee you someone will ask you about customer obsession. So please go to the website. There it is, AmazonIntervieweesAcademy.com. Snaffle yourself and enroll for the Customer Obsession Masterclass. I don't use it as an email list gathering tool, so I promise I will not be following you up with emails. I know that's the modus operandum of a lot of coaches. They give you freebies so they can follow you up and chase you for more product. I don't do that. Sorry, my thing's banging away. My silly dog has walked into the room. I won't chase you for marketing. Take it, enjoy it, it's free, it's a gift.